The strange part is, nothing looked wrong. That's what stayed with me for years. The room looked peaceful, the bed was neatly prepared, the lamp beside the wall gave off a soft golden light. Everything looked exactly the way people said it should. And still, I couldn't stop the feeling growing quietly inside my chest. Something didn't feel right. Not dangerous, not dramatic. Just wrong in a way I didn't have words for yet. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed with my hands folded tightly together. My fingers kept rubbing against each other nervously. Tiny movements, the kind people make when they're trying to stay calm without realizing they're panicking. The silence inside the room felt heavy. Not empty, heavy. Like the air itself was waiting for something from me. And the harder I tried to act normal, the more disconnected I felt from myself. I didn't understand it then.
But emotional confusion becomes terrifying when everyone around you treats confusion like weakness. That was the first moment I truly felt alone, because nobody prepared me for this part. Nobody explained how strange it feels when your entire life changes overnight. But your emotions don't change with it. People talked about responsibility. People talked about marriage. People talked about expectations. But nobody talked about fear. Nobody talked about emotional uncertainty. Nobody talked about what happens when you suddenly realize you're expected to emotionally understand something you've never actually been taught. That realization sat quietly inside my chest all night, heavy, persistent, impossible to ignore. That's when something started to feel off. Not because of him, not because of the room, because I realized everyone expected confidence from me, while internally I still felt completely lost. And once you start pretending to understand something emotionally, you slowly stop trusting your real feelings. That's what happened to me. He sat beside me carefully, slowly, and I noticed something immediately. He looked nervous too. That surprised me. I think part of me expected certainty from him, expected adulthood to automatically create emotional understanding. But sitting there beside him, he looked just as unsure as I felt, and somehow, that made everything heavier. Because now it wasn't just one confused person inside the room, it was two young people trying to perform emotional readiness, because everyone around them expected it. At the time, I told myself this was normal, that maybe everyone feels emotionally awkward during moments like this, that maybe confusion disappears naturally after marriage, but deep inside, something resisted that explanation, because nervousness fades. This feeling stayed. This felt deeper than nervousness. This felt like emotional isolation, and emotional isolation changes people quietly. We barely spoke, just small conversation, short answers, the kind people use when they don't know how to speak honestly about what they're actually feeling. And every time the conversation stopped, the silence returned immediately. Stronger than before, I became aware of every tiny sound around me. The shifting blankets, the wind touching the curtains, the old wooden floor creaking softly somewhere in the house. Even my own heartbeat sounded loud. That's when I realized something painful. I was trying to disappear emotionally inside the room, trying not to say the wrong thing, trying not to seem immature, trying not to reveal how emotionally unprepared I actually felt. Because once you believe everyone else understands something except you stop trusting your own emotions. You become quieter, smaller, more careful. That's exactly what happened to me. Looking back now, I think that was the first night I truly understood how silence shapes people emotionally, especially young people, especially women raised inside environments where difficult conversations disappear quickly. Because silence doesn't remove confusion, it hides it, and hidden confusion slowly becomes shame. I didn't understand it then, but I had already started blaming myself for not emotionally understanding something nobody honestly explained. That's what stayed with me longest, not the night itself, the shame. The feeling that everyone else understood adulthood better than I did. The next morning made everything stranger, because everything looked ordinary again. Breakfast was prepared. People smiled. Conversation sounded calm and familiar. Nobody asked how I felt. Nobody explained anything. And meanwhile, inside me, something still felt unsettled. That was the beginning of something much bigger. The split between appearance and reality. Between what people show publicly and what they quietly carry emotionally. Days passed, then weeks, but the feeling stayed, quiet, persistent, like a question sitting somewhere deep inside my mind, And once a question stays long enough, it slowly changes how you see the world around you. I started noticing things I ignored before, the way older women avoided certain conversations, the way uncomfortable subjects disappeared quickly, the way silence filled spaces where honesty should have existed. That's when something started to feel off again, not just about marriage, about the entire culture surrounding emotional silence, because I slowly realized something painful. People weren't quiet because they fully understood. They were quiet because silence had been passed down to them too. That realization changed everything for me. One afternoon, I was helping another young woman fold clothes outside. Her name was Rebecca. We weren't discussing anything serious, just normal conversation, daily work, family things, and then suddenly, very quietly, she asked me something. "Did your first night feel strange too?" I looked at her immediately, and before I could answer, she smiled nervously. I thought I was the only one who felt that way. That sentence stayed with me for years, because suddenly, everything made sense in a different way. Not comforting, painful, because I realized this confusion wasn't personal weakness. It was pattern, something repeated quietly between many women, something nobody explained honestly, but everyone silently carried. That realization followed me home that evening. I remember laying awake, staring into the darkness, thinking about how many people probably entered marriage emotionally unprepared, while pretending confidence because everyone around them expected it. How many blamed themselves for confusion created by silence. Night after night, those thoughts stayed with me. And every morning, everything continued normally again. That was the hardest part, the normalness of it all. Because when emotional confusion becomes ordinary, people stop questioning it. At the time, I told myself this was normal. But slowly, I stopped believing that. Because healthy things usually become clearer with honesty. This never fully did, and that realization frightened me. Not because I suddenly understood everything, but because I realized emotional preparation mattered far more than anyone admitted. Not rules, not appearances, real emotional understanding. That's what people truly needed. I didn't understand it then, but silence shapes people emotionally long before they recognize it happening. It teaches you which emotions should stay hidden, which questions feel dangerous, which discomforts are supposed to be carried quietly. And once you grow up inside that silence, you stop recognizing confusion as something deserving answers. You start treating it like personal weakness instead. That understanding took years. Years of slowly learning words I didn't have when I was younger. Pressure, expectation, emotional isolation, suppression, things I had experienced deeply, without knowing how to describe them. And once you finally have words for something, you begin seeing your past differently. Looking back now, I don't think the hardest part was the night itself. I think the hardest part was realizing how many people silently carried the same confusion, while pretending everything felt normal. Because once silence becomes tradition, people stop recognizing the emotional damage it causes. And maybe that's why honest conversations matter so much. Because confusion becomes less frightening the moment someone finally says, "I felt that too." If you're still listening, maybe part of this story feels familiar to you too. Maybe you've experienced moments where everyone expected emotional understanding, without emotional guidance. If you have, you're not weak, and you're not alone. That's something I wish someone had told me much earlier. I still think about that night sometimes. Not because of what happened, but because of how deeply disconnected from myself I felt while pretending everything was fine. Because of how badly I wanted someone to explain things honestly, instead of expecting automatic understanding. Some things stay with you, not as clear memories, but as emotional weight your body remembers long before your mind fully understands it. And maybe that's the part no one talks about. Not marriage itself, but the silence surrounding it. The expectation that young people should automatically understand adulthood emotionally, without emotional guidance. If you grew up in a place where silence was treated like maturity, where difficult conversations disappeared quickly, where confusion had to stay hidden, I understand you. Because I know what it feels like to realize too late that nobody ever taught you how to emotionally understand the moment you were expected to survive. And maybe, speaking honestly about it now, is the first step toward finally breaking that silence. If this story connected with you, leave a comment below. Sometimes hearing "me too" changes everything, and if you want more honest stories people usually stay silent about, subscribe, because maybe these conversations matter more than we realize.